And what we're going to be doing, let me first kind of walk through the different steps I'll be going through. That way you can follow along. And so the way the scorecard works is on the back end of the scorecard, in order to connect to the data sources, I'm going to be using Business Objects, which is an SAP product. And the piece we'll be using is it's called the Designer tool. And what that does is that allows you to connect to your data source. And that could be any data source, whether it's Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, etc. You can connect to multiple different relational databases. And it really creates your metadata layer, which is basically what you then would be accessing from Executive Scorecard. So we'll first create the database connection. We'll then go ahead and bring in the tables that we need from the database for our retail, it's the retail database. And once we produce the universe, we'll then export that universe. And at that point, we'll be doing everything from then on in Executive Scorecard, which is creating the KPIs, creating the scorecard, and then ultimately creating the page. We should be able to get through the whole demo in probably 30 to 40 minutes. And so we should have plenty of time at the end for questions. So what I'm doing is I'm actually on another server that we're using, and I have the Universe Designer open. Again, this is an SAP product, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a connection, and this is going to allow us to connect to our retail database. So I'm going to go ahead and create a database connection, and there's a wizard which helps you follow through very easily. We'll call this one Retail. And our data source we're using is going to be a SQL Server database. And we'll use the JDBC driver. And at this point, we just simply provide the login credentials to get to that database. And the name of our database is Retail Sample Database. Now this is actually a fictitious company that we've created as far as the sample data, but this can certainly be any type of a database. This could be a data warehouse. This could be potentially even a transactional database, although you would probably typically want to move that data from your production transaction system, for example, order information, and pull it into more of an offline data repository such as the data warehouse. Let's go ahead and test the connection, make sure we have all of our connection information set up correctly. It says it's responding. We'll do next. And on this screen, we'll just simply take the defaults and finish. And so we've now created a connection from the database into the SAP product. Now what we're going to do is actually create what's called a universe. And this is, again, our metadata layer. This is basically how the database talks to the application. Let's call this, we'll just call it retail as well, the name of the universe. And we will select the connection that we just created, retail. And we'll test it one more time. Looks good. Now once I did OK, it opened up to an empty window. And so all I have to do now is simply bring in the tables that I need. And in this case, here's my retail sample database. Underneath the DBO owner, there's a few tables I'm going to go ahead and bring in. The first one's the periods in. This is a special table that's used by Executive Scorecard. This is really what allows you, it's a calendar table, and it allows you to take any data and roll it up into either a weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly metric, and then display in your scorecard. So that's a key table that we'll be using. The next one is the shop fact. This is essentially a transaction table that has all the order history for this store. And the third one is the outlet lookup, which is basically a list of all the store locations. So I'll bring those tables in, and then we'll close this. Now I'm just going to simply reshuffle these a little bit, and then we'll set up some joins. So the first join, now I have to basically create a relationship between these tables. So to begin with, what I'm going to do is, on the shop fact, we need to join the transaction date or the order dates to our calendar table. So what I'm going to do is select the transaction date and bring it over here to the start date. Now I'm going to open up this connection, and we're going to make a small modification to this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to change this from an equal sign to a greater than or equal to. Okay, so what I did is I changed this relationship, and so what it's doing is it's going to take for a given transaction date, if it's greater than or equal to the start date of my calendar and less than or equal to the end date, so I need to make one more change. Then this will roll up all this, and so for example, if we're going to develop a monthly KPI, the start date for September is September 1st, and the end date is the last day of the month. This will ensure that all the transactions that fall within that date range will get calculated to provide us a monthly KPI, and it will do the same for all prior months as well. So I'm going to go ahead and parse this to make sure my syntax is okay. And the last thing I'm going to do is just detect the cardinality. And what this does is this just simply sets the relationship. Now, this does show us a many-to-many relationship, which you typically don't want. However, we're going to address this in the executive scorecard, and I'll show you that in about 10 minutes when we get to that point. So we're going to click OK. So now what we're going to do is set up a very simple relationship between the store and then the transaction table. So here, the relationship is going to be this shop ID. And I don't see the shop ID list, so I'm just going to arbitrarily select a column over here. And a quicker way to do this is simply open up the connection, scroll down to where it has the shop ID, and maybe it's at the top, I just didn't see it. There we go, here's the shop ID. And so now it creates a very simple relationship. We'll detect this, and it shows for every shop, for every store location, there are multiple transactions in the transaction table. And we'll select OK. Now, what we have to do is make this information available, so whenever we publish this to the executive scorecard, we can take advantage of all the information from these tables. So to do that, I'm going to take the period dimension table, and we're going to drag the entire table over to the left. And what this does is whatever is available, it automatically creates a folder. And anything in this folder can be used to develop your KPI calculations, or as well as reports, if you want to develop reports down the road. So I have my period, and I just simply give it a better name, call it period. Now I'm going to bring in the shop fact. And let's go ahead and give this another name. Let's just call it orders. And apply. And the last one is the outlet lookup for the stores. And let's go ahead and give this one a new name as well. We'll just call it stores. Okay, so at this point we've created our connection to our data source, and we've brought in 3 tables. We've made this defined the relationships between the tables and made the information available. Now the last step is to go ahead and save this universe. Now what this does, it saves it locally on my laptop. I now just need to simply take this universe, one last step before I export this. Let's just, there's a way to check the integrity. And this just goes through and make sure there's no syntax errors with what we've done. If there is an error, this will let us know, and then we can go and adjust and make corrections. As you can see, everything came back okay. So now I'm just simply going to export this universe. And there's a special domain within Business Objects that is accessible to the scorecard. It's the XS Studio. So we will use the default, and we will export this universe. And now this universe is now successfully exported out to the SAP repository. Now what we need to do is make this available to Executive Scorecard. So to do that, let me go into the Executive Scorecard and close the designer. Okay, here's the screen I'm trying to get to. There we go. So there's a Java console, and in here, this is really where it integrates the universe and makes it available to the scorecard. So I'm going to select the load metadata, and what this does is it takes the universe I just exported to SAP Business Objects and pulls it up into the Executive Scorecard application. And while that's running, it takes about 20 to 30 seconds. I'm going to come down here and get ready to log into the Executive Scorecard. And from this point on, we'll do everything, the remaining work in the Executive Scorecard. And you'll notice this successfully invoked. Now for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and export this again, just to be sure that it loads. And now we can go into the Executive Scorecard. Okay, so now we're logged into the Executive Scorecard. We can go ahead and start developing a new scorecard. So the first thing I'm going to do, you'll notice pages are loading. These are the pages that have already been predefined or developed. And at the end of this, we'll actually create a page very similar to this. So let's go ahead and go into the studio. And from here is where we can create the entire scorecard. So what I'm going to do is you'll notice off to the left, this is where it has all the current list of scorecards. Let's go ahead and create a new one. And we will call this Retail Scorecard. Create. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a number of perspectives and objectives that belong to the scorecard. So I just simply right-clicked on the scorecard and I chose Create New Perspective. And now this is where it creates the hierarchy for the scorecard. And the first perspective is going to be Customer Excellence. And we're going to go back up to the scorecard and create one more perspective. And this one's going to be Sales and Marketing. And this we're going to have some financial type KPIs. Create that. Now what I'm going to do is go back to the Customer Excellence perspective and right-click and create a objective. And underneath the objectives are where we'll end up creating all of our KPIs. So this first objective will be improve customer satisfaction. And one thing I'm going to change, so the KPIs we develop will become monthly, but obviously you have the option of making these weekly, quarterly, or yearly. So we'll leave this as monthly. And we're going to change the calculation to weighted average. So as we develop the KPIs, they're all going to have the same weighting of 1. And we'll create. And I'm going to go back up to Customer Excellence and create one more objective. Actually, no, I think we're good on this one. I'm going to go down to the Sales and Marketing and create 2 objectives here. So the first one we create for Sales and Marketing is improve sales performance. And again, we'll select the weighted average for the calculations. Once we get to the point of developing KPIs, we'll select Create. And we'll create a second objective underneath sales and marketing, and this will be improved campaign effectiveness. Okay, so at this point, as you can see, we already have the basic framework for a scorecard. Now, the last step is to create the KPIs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come up here to an existing scorecard. It doesn't matter which one. And we're just going to arbitrarily pick a KPI. We're going to clone that KPI. This error we're getting, we'll resolve that in a minute. So we're going to clone this KPI. And I'm now going to come down. So here's the KPI that was just cloned, and I'm going to move this copied or cloned KPI down to our improved customer satisfaction objective. And then before I go any further, let me go ahead and resolve this error we're getting. So what I'm going to do is go back to the Java console, and we're going to refresh the universes one more time. And then while that's happening, what I'm going to do is close out the Explorer, and then once that gets refreshed, we'll go ahead and open the Explorer back up, and we'll continue on. Okay, that should resolve our issue. Let's go take a look. So we'll go back into the studio. Okay, and we're not getting the error anymore. So now we've basically taken a KPI from an existing scorecard and we've simply moved it to our scorecard. Now we need to change everything about this KPI. So I'm going to start by this first KPI we're going to create is going to be the average mystery shopper score. The description, this was the prior description for the prior KPI. I'll remove that. You can certainly add a description. The unit of measure, you have a few options. You have percentage, US dollar, or days. Obviously, you have some KPIs that don't fit any of those. In this case, we're actually just looking at a score. So I'll just simply type in the word score, because that's really what we end up getting. It's going to be the mystery shopper is going to be a score between 0 and 10 on how well that store or that particular employee was rated as part of that mystery shopper program. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the threshold to a maximize, because the goal is to come up with based on our goal, is a maximum score for that mystery shopper. So on the low end, we'll put 0. On the high end, let's go ahead and finish this out. So it would be from 0 to 5 is considered unacceptable. From 5 to 9 is considered marginal, and then from 9 to 10 is considered acceptable. And so these are the goals. When you think about setting up a KPI, this is really where you define those goals and objectives at this level. This determines what determines a red, yellow, or green status for that particular KPI. You can also add business motivations. Again, I'm going to remove these because these were specific to the prior KPI. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and save this. And now you'll notice at the top there's another tab, and this is really where everything comes together on the calculation. So the first thing we're going to do is this business context. again, since we took this from a different scorecard, it's pointing to a context or a universe that we're not interested in. So we're going to select the universe that we created, which is the retail. And if we scroll down, you'll notice that retail universe is now available to pick from. And I'll select OK. And now what we're going to do is open up the formula builder, which gives us the ability to go in here and make some changes to the calculation. And we're going to remove the original formula and create our own. So for this mystery shopper score, really what it is, it's an average of the shopper scores for a given time period. And so what we're going to be using is the average aggregating function. And you'll notice that within the parentheses there's a comma. So to the left of the comma is where we will put the object that we're going to be using to measure. And what we'll be doing is going into the orders, and in here there should be a mystery shopper score. So again, this is a score from 0 to 10, and I'm then going to move to the right of the comma, and this is where you add the filter expression, and we're going to add two. The first one we're going to add is we only are interested in the mystery where there is actually a mystery shopper score. Otherwise, it's going to deflate our value. Obviously, not every single order is going to have a mystery shopper attributed, so we only want those where the mystery shopper score is greater than 0. The second step is we want to define this to a time period. And to do that, so I'm putting in the AND condition, so if the mystery shopper score is greater than 0, and we need to define a time period. And to do that, we're going to be using what's called the period entity. And what this is whenever I ultimately calculate these KPIs, I'm going to rerun this from January of this year to the current month. And this will go out and create an average mystery shopper score for every month from January through September. And it will roll up all the orders in any given month based on that transaction date. So the period entity is equal to the period. And remember, this is where I mentioned earlier that period is a special table within Executive Scorecard that we basically copy that table into our database where we happen to have our retail data, and that's how it's able to identify that this is a monthly KPI. And let's go ahead and validate this. Make sure there's no syntax errors. And it passed validation, so let's go ahead and select OK. And at this point, we've already created the KPIs. We're going to save everything we've done. And let's go ahead and test the KPI. So whenever you test this, it'll actually run it for the current month. And as you can see, it came back with a score of 7 is the average score for the month of September. And it gave it a scorecard value based on the threshold we set at 4.95, which is relatively low. So at that point, we've developed our first KPI. Let's go ahead and create one more underneath customer satisfaction. And to do that, we'll go ahead and reuse this KPI we just created. We'll clone this one, since this one is already pointing to the universe that we need. And I will change this one. And this one's going to be the shopping cart abandonment rate. All right, so here's an example where you could have, this could be a situation where you have a brick and mortar and an online store, and they want to be able to measure and also understand the trending of the abandonment rate of their shopping carts and help understand that trend and see what they can do to improve that. So in this case, the rate is actually going to be a percentage, so I'll change it from a score to a percentage. And you'll notice, again, every KPI created is automatically going to be defined at the monthly level. And now what we're going to do is set up some thresholds. So for online business, obviously, it's very different. You typically get a much higher abandonment rate than you would, obviously, at a brick and mortar store. Here we have 0 to 50% is considered one thing I need to change here. This is actually minimized. The whole goal is to minimize the shopping cart abandonment rate. So here what we do is between 0 and 50% is considered acceptable. From 50 to 75 is considered marginal, and then anything below that is considered unacceptable. We'll go ahead and save the changes. And let's go ahead and create a calculation for this. So again, we have our business context. It's perfect, right? We want it to be, all we have to do is simply change the calculation. So let's just remove the entire calculation that we did for mystery shopper. And let's go ahead and create a new one. So this one's going to be a little more involved, but not much. In order to determine the shopping cart abandonment rate, what we're doing is we're looking at the number of orders that were abandoned in a given time period divided by all of the orders placed in that same time period. So to do that, we're going to be doing a count, and we'll be counting the orders. So I'm going to come to the orders folder, and I'm going to do a count on the order number. And I'm now going to move to the right of the comma. And this is where, again, we have to create that filter. So the first filter is going to be based on the abandoned rate. So up here, there's actually a flag that tells you which orders were abandoned. And so I'm going to say the abandoned. And I know from understanding the data that if it's a 1, it was abandoned. If it was a 0, it was not abandoned. So I'm going to select the 1 as indicating that these were abandoned orders. And the last step is to make this time-bound like we did on the mystery shopper. So we're going to do that period entity again and set that equal to the period, which is the special table that we have. Okay, so now to simplify this, now this is going to be divided by all the orders for that same time period. So a quick way to do that, I just simply copied the calculation, put divided by, and then in the denominator, we'll copy this, and all we have to do is remove the abandoned filter. So now we have the count of abandoned orders divided by all the orders in that same time period. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to make this as a whole number, not a fraction. So we're just going to simply multiply this entire equation times 100. So if we end up with a percentage, it's going to give us a whole number, not a decimal. And so it validated, we will save this. And let's go ahead and test this KPI. And as you can see, the abandonment rate falls just in the marginal status of 49.99% for the month of September. Okay, now what we're going to do is move on to the sales and marketing perspective, and we're going to create a few more KPIs. So I will go ahead and take let's go ahead and take the shopping cart abandonment rate KPI. Let's clone this and move this down. And let's go ahead and add it to let's do the sales performance first. So we will take this copied KPI, move it down. And underneath the improved sales performance, the first KPI we're going to do is just understand the average order size. And this is going to be in US dollars. And the goal is to maximize our average order size. So let's set that to maximize. And let's go ahead and update these thresholds. So let's go ahead and start on the high end. So we will put $250, 200. Marginal will be from 150 to 200. And then let's go ahead and roll this up to 100. So obviously if it goes below 100, it would also show up as red, but this just helps balance out your thresholds whenever you actually see them on the dashboard. You don't have a big section of red and then a smaller section of green and yellow. So let's go ahead and save this. And we'll go into the calculation and create a new calculation. And so in order to determine the average order size, this is actually a very straightforward calculation. What we'll be doing is simply summing up the amount sold in a given time period divided by the count of orders in that same time period. So this will be a sum. And we'll be looking at the amount sold. And all all we need here is the period entity. Okay. Now for this, we're now going to do on the denominator, we're going to be doing a count. And we'll be counting the order numbers. And just to save a couple steps, we're simply just going to be making sure that this falls in the same time period. So I'll just copy and paste this over here. And that's it. So this one's a very simple calculation. Pass the validation. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and test it while we're here. Here we go, 157 for the month, the average order size. Now, one last thing I want to do on this one, a little different. What I like to do is do a breakdown on this one because we have multiple stores. So let's break this down by store. So when we ultimately calculate this, what this will do is this will give you an overall average order size. And you can also drill down at the individual store level to see which stores are meeting that goal or not meeting that goal. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to the shopping cart abandoned KPI. Let's clone this one more time. And let's bring this down to the campaign effectiveness. And let's do a couple KPIs around marketing campaigns. So the first one's going to be percentage of sales from direct marketing, mail marketing. Okay, and the unit is a percentage, and let's go ahead and update the threshold. So 0 to 5, and this is actually a maximize. Let's turn this around to a maximize threshold. And 0 to 5 is considered unacceptable. 5 to 10 is marginal. And then 10 to 20 or anything above 10 is considered within goal. And let's save this. Now let's go to the calculation details and create a calculation for this one. So in order to achieve this, what we're going to be doing is taking the total amount sold within the time period for those orders that were attributed to direct mail, divided by the total amount sold at that store in the same time period. So here we'll be using a sum. And you'll notice, again, this is fairly similar to the other calculations we've done. Amount sold, and here we're going to be going down to the direct mail flag. So in this case, the direct mail flag equals 1, which indicates that it came from a direct mail. And the period entity equals period. And we're going to take this and divide it by all the orders in that same time period. So again, I'll just simply take the whole equation, divide it by, and paste in the same calculation, and just remove the direct mail filtering. And then the last step is, again, we want this as represent as a whole number instead of a percentage or a fraction, so we're going to multiply this times 100. And let's validate this. Now let's get a couple more, and these will actually go very quickly because it's going to be essentially the exact same calculation, but for a different marketing program or campaign. So I went ahead and cloned the direct marketing KPI, and this next one is going to be print ad marketing. And the thresholds, we'll keep them the same for this one, so we'll hit save. And under calculation, there's only one small change we have to make, which is the direct mail flag. We're going to swap this out for the print ad. So I'll go back under my orders, and there should be a print ad in here, print ad flag, equal to 1, and that one's it. So that's a very fast calculation we did. Save that. And let's clone this one more time. And I think this will probably be our last KPI. This last one, let's do coupon downloads. And let's adjust the thresholds. And save. And let's make one small change to our calculation, and then we can go ahead and build our dashboard page. So remove the print ad and replace this with the coupon download flag. Okay, so at this point we put together a basic scorecard, 2 perspectives. It has 3 objectives. One centered around improved customer satisfaction. We have underneath the improved sales performance, we have the average order size. And we have under campaign effectiveness, we have a couple of KPIs specific to those different campaigns. So the last step to do is we need to actually run these calculations. So to do that, is we will just simply recalculate. You'll notice once this is developed, you can certainly schedule these to run on a recurring basis, so everything becomes 100% automated. In this case, we'll just manually run this once. And the way this works is the KPIs are actually calculated at the context level. So by simply running this retail context, this will calculate all the KPIs that are associated to that context. And we're going to set this to the beginning of the year. And let's go ahead and let this run. This usually takes, in this example, probably less than 20 to 30 seconds. So by the time we actually get out here, close out a studio, by the time we create a page, that scorecard should be ready to go. So let's go ahead and create a new page. And let's build a page. And this is the great part about the scorecard is how easy it is to build a page. You'll notice there's a small toolbar. I have one large window. The first thing I'm going to do is just switch the direction, and it's a little out of focus, but off to the left here. I'm going to split this in two, from left to right, and then I'm going to split this one on the right, top to bottom. So I end up with 3 windows. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a component on the left, and this is where we're going to actually put our scorecard. And here you have a number of options. We'll put the scorecard component on the left. We will put the KPI view up here. So as I select a specific objective, the KPIs will come into view in this window. And then down below in the history, any KPI I select will automatically display all the history for that KPI. Now what I can do is simply select the scorecard I choose to look at. Let's go ahead and pick our retail scorecard that we just developed. And if the calculations are finished, then we should be able to see our data. You can also set a certain time period. We want to look at the current time period every time we log in. And give that a second to come up. And there you go. So now we actually have our scorecard created. Now I can certainly come in here and configure this to have certain KPIs displayed every time I log in. And they can come from a combination of objectives. By default, everything is wired, so I just simply select customer satisfaction. I'll automatically see those 2 KPIs. So here's our mystery shopper score, which is the first KPI we created, followed by the abandonment rate. I can then select sales performance, and here's the average order size. And if I select this KPI, you'll notice down below, it immediately gives me all my history, month over month. It provided an average on a monthly basis, what that average order size was. Now let's take a look at the campaign effectiveness, and here's the 3 marketing KPIs we put together. And again, here you can see the trending for how well those different marketing campaigns, how effective they were. So let me go back to the sales performance. Remember we had actually put, on the average order size, we had actually put a breakdown on that at the store level. And to see that, I'll come on, you'll notice every KPI has a small icon, which gives you basically a pop-up window of the history. And let's go ahead and double click on this. And what this is doing is it's simply opening up what's called the Explore tab. And if I move my cursor up, you can see that this is a tab we're on right now. And it takes me right into this order. So here again, we're seeing the history. From here, we can change the look of this, half year to date, again, depending on how much data you have. You can change the look of this from a line chart to a bar chart, as well as the grid, which helps you better understand month over month how that average order size is trended. But we can also come over here to the average order size and see the breakdown. And here I can actually look at every individual store, Austin for example, and look at how well that has trended. And this will automatically update as I select a different location. So Dallas, for example, has not done very well, Houston, etc. And again, you can continue breaking this down even further if you wanted to.